Good evening, everybody. It's another exciting day with an exciting topic. Thank you so much for joining. Without the participants, our events wouldn't be a success. So I'm really grateful to all the participants today, and I'm also very grateful to two eminent speakers who are joining me today to present this topic. We are going to be discussing Chinese influence operations in India and its neighborhood. Especially, we are going to focus on South Asian region, particularly three nations: India, apart from India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. These four nations are our focus today. We have two eminent speakers who will be speaking today. We have Ambassador Vijayakant Karna. Vijayakant Karna, Ambassador, is a professor of political science since 1987 at the Department of Political Science, Tribhuvan University in Kathmandu. During his career, Professor Karna has also served as the chief editor of an English daily. He served as ambassador of Nepal to Denmark from 2008 to 12, and he was also accredited to Finland at the same time, Sweden, and also Norway. He was also a key member of Nepal's delegation at climate change negotiations of the Conference of Parties of the UNFCCC in Copenhagen in 2009. He's as a senior facilitator for conflict prevention program for UNDP. He collaborated with local and national peace committees, political parties, and civil society for endurable peace through community mediation and dialogues from 2012 to 15. Professor Karna is one of the writers of UNDP, Kathmandu, Nepal Human Development Report 2009. He is currently the executive chairperson of Center for Social Inclusion and Federalism at Nepal, and he focuses his research on geopolitics, foreign policy, and national security. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining. It's a pleasure to
Thank
have you
you.
today.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We also have Namrata Asija. She's a research fellow with the Center for China Analysis and Strategy in Delhi. And her primary area of interest is Chinese foreign policy and India-Taiwan relations. She was also the recipient of the Taiwan Fellowship by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs between 2019 and 20, and the Enrichment Scholarship by the Ministry of Education Taiwan between 2014 and 15. Before joining CCAS, she was a senior research officer at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies in Delhi, and has been a visiting researcher at the Institute of International Relations, National Chengchi University, Taipei, and National Tsinghua University in Zinchu. I hope I'm pronouncing these names correctly, Namrata.
It's okay,
She's a
sir.
Mandarin expert, by the way. Yeah. She has also completed a one-year intensive level Mandarin language from the National Chengdu University, Taipei. Thank you, Namrata, for joining, and it's a pleasure to have both of you speakers. I'll be the third speaker, while Ambassador Karna will be focusing on Nepal. Namrata will touch upon Nepal and also touch upon Bangladesh, cover extensively Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. I will be talking about India. The host of the day is Law and Society Alliance, which is a Delhi headquartered think tank. We also have activities in Hyderabad, Bengaluru, Mumbai, Ahmedabad. Actually, today there is another physical event happening in Ahmedabad, where our Secretary General, Advocate Kumar Vaidyanathan from Mumbai, is attending right now. So that's why he's not able to join here today. So we have activities. We do cross-sectoral research on geopolitics, defense, national security, law, economy, and all these aspects. So this is our organization. We also bring together several thinkers, businessmen, and policy makers to forums such as these to discuss the issues of critical importance for national security and national interest, and also try to achieve certain action plan out of these events. That is our small introduction of the host of the day. Just to introduce the topic and set the context before I call Namrata to speak. This influence operation by the Chinese, communist China, is something that nobody really focused on while they discussed national security issues globally for a very long time. Though this influence operation has been going on for a very long time, probably decades now. and it's part of their strategy to gain influence globally and also to emerge as the number one in the new world order, emerging new world order. So law and social aliens particularly took interest in the subject after the Ladakh conflict in 2020, when we observed that there were several articles in Indian publications written by people with PhDs behind their names, who were the tone and tenor of the articles were pro-China, slamming India, blaming India for the conflict, and also dissing the Indian armed forces as an incapable force. So that kind of triggered our research, and we started looking at the individuals who were writing, what is their background, and from there on, this particular threat, Chinese threat of influence, emerged as a big theme, and we started working on it, and we produced the report in 2020. I'll talk about it when I make my presentation, just to give you an idea of where it all started for us. And probably when I spoke to several strategic affairs experts globally and also in India, I learned that this topic of Chinese influence operation is a topic that was discussed in an assured tone manner uh, among these experts, and nobody wanted to openly talk about it or take responsibility and ownership of the information that they have. And because of which we thought we should talk about it more. And I'm very happy that in the recent times, me and Law and Society Alliance and CCAs have jointly organized series of events in this topic. So I'm very happy that Namrata, who is a fellow traveler in the research on the subject, is with me today on the subject, and also Ambassador Karna is joining us in this effort. Uh, in fact, what has happened is, since the time we started working, I noticed that several other countries, several other think tanks all over the world have also started working on the same topic. In fact, when we released the subject, I also noticed that Center for Strategic and International Studies has also come out with reports on Germany, Australia, Japan, and several other nations. So similarly, a US think tank has come up with a similar report on the Chinese influence operations in the US. Canadian think tanks have also come about doing it. UK think tank have started doing it. So the trend is spreading the world over. So that's what we have noticed, and that's why we wanted to discuss this subject today. With the short introduction, I just wanted to make some administrative announcements. One is, I request all the participants to mute their mics so that there is no disturbance. We are recording this event. So since we want to put out this video for a wider audience later, so we don't want any disturbance when the presentations are made, so that the recording comes out well, and also it's a mark of respect for the speakers that there is no disturbance. And also that if you have any network problem at your end, please mute your videos, so that you get, actually right now I'm having problem with my network, so I've muted my video, so that you don't have any much network issues at your end, and also you're able to listen to the speakers. We are also going to take question answers at the end of the event. So if you have any questions for the speakers, name the speaker and ask the question. You can put it in the chat box. I will take up that particular subject question and ask the speaker to respond to that particular question. So with these words, I welcome all the participants. A lot of eminent people also are there I think there is a lot of growing interest in the subject. So I welcome all of you to this event, and I request Namrata to make a presentation. As she speaks, I will open up her presentation so that we can present it to the audience. Namrata, the time is yours.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'd first like to thank Bipendra, sir, for having me here, and also Law and Society Alliance for arranging this conference. I think it's a topic that we all should have been discussing, you know, for a long time, but I think nevertheless we have started, talking about it and bringing it in the discourse. So I'm going to basically just mention maybe a couple of things from Nepal because Ambassador Vijay is here, and I think I leave it to Sir to basically cover Nepal. So I'll focus more on Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, but I'm also going to give a brief background as to how the Chinese actually operate and how the systems are interlinked. So I'll just request Sir to just share my presentation so that I can start off. And also many of you would be interested in, we had a recent conference where Bipendra Sir was also there. The usual question that people ask, of course, is why are we focusing on Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, or, basically countries in South Asia? I think it's very important for us to do that because what the Chinese are doing, they are kind of basically trying to change the narrative. And the activities in India's immediate neighborhood is of great importance for us to realize what the Chinese are doing and how they operate and what their intentions are. So I'll just begin with my presentation. I'll give you a brief background as to you can just go to the next slide, sir. um, so what is the concept behind these influence operations in, especially when we talk about China? And I've seen many universities, many people who actually study China. They don't focus much on the United Front Work Department and, the basic structure of the Communist Party, because it's very important for anyone to understand that. And, unless we understand what the United Front strategy is and how they operate, it's difficult for us to analyze the extent of influence operation or the extent of their activities and the intention behind it. So United Front was basically this concept was formulated when China was under the Japanese occupation and the communists were operating in mainland China. So the United Front, basically the concept was that a CCP policy that consists in eliminating internal and external enemies, controlling groups that could defy its authority, constructing a coalition around the party to serve its interest and projecting its influence abroad. Extremely important because it does two things. Not only gives legitimacy to the party in mainland China, but also influences, tries to build a favorable environment for the party outside mainland China. Now, who are the main actors? When we talk about influence operations, we have to understand that it's done right from, the party. So within the party, they have a propaganda department. They have the United Front Work Department, extremely important department, and then the International Liaison Department. This is also very important because it maintains, basically the work of this department is to maintain relationship with foreign political parties, and they have almost 610 offices around the world. And so basically this is the organization that will sign MOUs with different political parties, be it political parties in India, Nepal, but anywhere around the world. So they are the ones who actually maintain relationship with different political parties. Then we have the Chinese Communist Youth League, and then within the People's Liberation Army, they have set up this strategic support force that also helps them in expanding their propaganda, cyber security, and all. When we talk about this, so this is the department that kind of does that. Then public and private companies. And I also want to clarify here that in China, I mean, of course, when we study China, we understand that there is no private companies as such. So everything, of course, is controlled by the party, and you'll always have either a party member or a PLA member, someone that has links as the board of directors or advisors, whatever you can call, in the companies also. Then within the state, this is their counterintelligence operations also that this department does. That is the Ministry of State Security. So basically, these are the different organizations within the Chinese Communist Party that operate, and they work for the influence operations. Now, what do they use? The next slide, sir. Now, what are the different, how do they operate? So they use everything that we can think of. Because, when we're talking about the influence operation, sometimes we feel, okay, it's just limited to the political parties, maybe, or maybe a few influential people. But no, that's not the case. They It's like an all-out attack, if you can, if I can use the word. So the diaspora, media, they use diplomacy, their own economy, that the Chinese are very good at it. They have been using their economy to arm twist a lot of countries into accepting, their side of the story. Then economy, culture, think tanks, education, politics, information manipulation, Chinese tourists, influencers, academicians, it's like across the board. Now, how do they? Next slide, sir. How do they? What are they doing? What exactly? When we think that what kind of influence operations? Now, these influence operations sometimes are very subtle. That people would not understand. Of course, sometimes they are very direct, but what they do is through these subtle influence operations, they are kind of building a base for themselves. Now, I'll give you a very small example in when you talk about Hollywood movies, production houses, most of them now have big Chinese stake. That is why you see the representation of Chinese in Hollywood movies. The recent Oscars are a very big example of that. But if you see gradually, if you see movies, I mean, if many of you must have, or even maybe your kids or your relatives or someone would have watched Kung Fu Panda, Mulan, and all these things, what they're trying to do is project Chinese culture. That Chinese culture is great. It kind of saves the world. Now this DreamWorks animation movie that I'm talking about, this movie was banned in Philippines, Vietnam, and a lot of other Southeast Asian countries. Why? It's an animated movie, and people would think, okay, why ban an animated movie? It's just meant for kids. Now in this movie, the main protagonist of the story, she meets a yeti on her rooftop in her house in Shanghai. Then she goes on a trip, with the yeti to find the roots. Now here, if you see, when there's a shot in the movie when she is kind of in her room, she has put up a trip across China. Now if you see the thing that I have this picture has encircled is a 9 dash line. Now, 9 dash line is other claims that China puts in South China Sea and all these, the East China Sea. So this is a 9 dash line, gives you that these are the areas that all belong to China. So they have just put this in the movie. Now, after, of course, the movie was released, it was banned in many countries, Southeast Asian countries. So this is how they operate. So next slide, please. Okay, so just before we go into the actual influence operations that they are doing in certain countries, now this is Double Think Lab. It's in Taiwan, and they're doing a study as to kind of trying to find out how much Chinese influence is there in countries, in all countries. So right now they have released a report that covers 82 countries. In that, Bangladesh ranking is 54 and India's ranking is 55. And the three sectors that are most affected in India are actually academicians, media, and military. So they have given different parameters to calculate the influence operations. And next slide, sir. So let me just go straight to Nepal. Now Nepal, of course, what they are doing in Nepal, I think I'll leave it to sir to elaborate on it. But I'll mention this one thing in Nepal. So there was an article when, if all of you remember, when the Gorkha land movement was going on in India, there was an article in the Chinese language media. It was written by a PLA officer who wrote that, Gorkhas work in the Indian army in huge numbers. And this is the, problem that is going on. They are asking for an independent, Gorkha land. Why can't we use Gorkhas to actually, get some problems to, give some problems to the Indian army? So they have, this kind of a thinking, especially when it comes to Gorkhas. Now, what they have done is they have given money to this China Studies Center in Kathmandu, and they have given a huge, I think around 27 lakh Nepalese rupees to study and find out why Gorkhas actually joined the Indian army. And they want to know the socio-economic background and what are the factors that lead to this study. And there was another article which actually said, why can't the Chinese actually do something about it and provide them subsidies so that they don't join the Indian army? Because the article said that the Indians are very weak. It's actually the Gorkhas that are very brave, and they form a very important part of the Indian army. If we are able to break it, we can, this will weaken the Indian army. So these are a couple of articles that came in the Chinese language media, and then this grant that has been given to a Nepalese this China Study Center to actually find out why they joined. So I think this is something why I'm mentioning all this also, because at the beginning also I told you that they are trying to change the narratives. Narratives are very important, because Bipendra sir just mentioned the Galwan Valley conflict. I was following the basically how they are using Twitter, Facebook, the apps that are banned in China to kind of propagate their ideas during the Galwan Valley incident. Now, there were many Twitter accounts that were opened around, say, March 2020. And they did one or two tweets, and all of them either had a photograph of a man or a woman with a Mao cap and a military and a PLA dress. And all of them became active after the April 2020 incident. Now, in one of these accounts, there was a video, and the video showed that Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping are fighting. So they are fighting, and what happens is Pakistan joins President Xi Jinping. Then slowly, of course, Nepal joins President Xi Jinping. Then Maldives joins President Xi Jinping, and only Bangladesh, and then Sri Lanka, of course, joins President Xi Jinping. Only Bangladesh is there with India. And when Bangladesh sees that everyone has joined China, Bangladesh also leaves India and joins China. And then all of them, run after Prime Minister Modi, and that's how India is defeated. Wishful thinking, but that's the aim. That gives you an idea into the Chinese thinking, what they think about India, how they want to use of course the countries in South Asia for to their advantage. So I'll leave Nepal here. I think I'll just now shift my focus to Sri Lanka. Now, Sri Lanka, very interesting actually. When I was trying to find out the Chinese influence operations in Sri Lanka, I found that there's a range of resources for its influence operations in Sri Lanka that China is using. These include social media, use of influence in conventional media, think tanks, university, research institutes, political parties, religious associations, because here Buddhist associations are key. They have a lot of exchange, and they give a lot of donations to Buddhist associations. And then the local Chinese community and workers also form a very important instrument for them to kind of operate there. Now, these, of course, the strategies that they use in Sri Lanka are both incentives, that is, they'll pay you direct, either cash or through something, or they'll give you a sponsorship or a funding, and also tactics where they will kind of threaten you, like open threats, boycott, online trolling, a trend that I have seen when it comes to Sri Lanka. Now I have now what of course is important is this table that I have shared with you, because for them Sri Lanka is very important because it gives them links, access to the Indian Ocean. Now, what they have done is that one of the projects that is going on is between China Sri Lanka Joint Center for Education and Research. This project is, and this is going on between the University of Ruhuna and the South China Sea Institute of Oceanology in Guangzhou, China, under the Chinese Academy of Sciences, for joint research projects in marine science education research in the Indian Ocean. Now, this project was signed during Xi Jinping's visit to Sri Lanka in 2014. The project is part of course, Chinese efforts to build underwater surveillance networks in Indian Ocean and South China Sea to accurately track vessels. This has, been in their mind for, like, even the Gwadar port that they have developed. One of the reasons is they are really scared that, 70% of their oil and shipment comes through this route, and they're very worried that if there is any point of time, if there is either a war or some skirmish with the US or any other country, this is where they're going to block it, and they have no access to the Indian Ocean. So this study that they're doing, and Chinese have been doing this underwater surveillance for a very long time. If I mean, I can say this here, but they've been doing it that in near Andaman and Nicobar Islands also, and there were articles published in the Chinese media claiming Andaman and Nicobar also as part of the Chinese territory, because when we think of these claims that the Chinese do, we always think of Ladakh, Arunachal, and these places, but this is also something that they have been writing very consistently. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now, through the research through this center is therefore strategically very important to tap into the University of Ruhana's centers and capabilities. It is part of China's efforts to build global underwater surveillance systems since 2018 onwards. They have already started that. Now, this university and the Chinese center, they have very frequent visits, and they have a lot of cooperation that is going on between these two centers. So this is in Sri Lanka. So next slide. In Sri Lanka, what they have also done is not only in Sri Lanka, but I mean, this is through my study that I've seen Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, all these places. What they have done is they have funded centers that focus on the Belt and Road Initiative, and they build a narrative in these countries as to how good Belt and Road Initiative is for these countries. Now, this is one such initiative in Sri Lanka, Belt and Road Initiative Sri Lanka. It's basically a platform, they say, specializes in culture, business, technological cooperation under BRI. But this center is also doing regular, producing regular magazines, articles, building basically a base, an atmosphere, positive atmosphere when it comes to the Belt and Road, and how they are focusing on how good it is that Sri Lanka is actually on board, and they are part of this Belt and Road Initiative. So next slide. This is another this is another think tank in Sri Lanka that is funded by the Chinese. They are getting a lot of donation by the Chinese, and they are also doing the same thing, building a narrative that is pro-China. So be it the people who are part of this group, when they have events, they call all the, if I can say, big shots in Sri Lanka to release reports on BRI, to kind of praise BRI, and also say that how important China has been, an asset actually to develop Sri Lanka, and to give prosperity to people, to create local jobs. But if you look at the BRI, and I have done my study on, I know, I mean, other places also I've looked at, but my study on South Asia, the data that we are getting, there are no local jobs that are being created. At the max, if there are local jobs, it's actually jobs of guards or the low-end jobs. And all these countries have Chinese engineers, Chinese workers. In fact, in Pakistan, when I was doing my study, noodles also are coming from China for them, for the consumption of the Chinese that are staying there. So these think tanks were, there are many aspects. When I think Bipendra sir and Vijay sir will be speaking, they'll bring in more aspects as to how different sectors are being influenced. But I am kind of focusing more on think tanks, educational institutions, because I feel that's something very benign that we all feel, that we don't feel, that if somebody is giving a scholarship, if someone is giving you a research grant, we feel that, okay, this is something that is not very, it's not an influence operation. But I think that is where they strike, the effect is the maximum, because they target students who are like 19, 20, just out of their house, have gone for a scholarship, and they come back loving China. And we know most of them are either employed in the China radio and CCTV, all these different arms of Chinese propaganda. In fact, when the Galwan Valley incident happened, at the peak of it, CRI has a Hindi website here, and it's operated. In fact, there are 4 or 5 Indian students who had studied in China who were working for it. They were writing such articles that were totally anti-India at that point of time. And it's not like, people will feel it's not a Chinese that is writing, it's an Indian, that is writing, and they're writing in Hindi. So the audience is even wider. It's not English that only, the few people are understanding. At least in North India, Hindi is something that everyone almost speaks. So you are reaching out to those many people. So next slide, sir. Now, Bangladesh, there's one difference that I found when I was studying Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. The difference here is that in Bangladesh, it's actually Huawei and ZTE that are doing the propaganda. Of course, all these departments that we have discussed are doing it, but the major, I would say, like maybe 60-70% of the Chinese propaganda is supported by Huawei and ZTE. So this is these are how do I say, they were tablets that they had given students and young students, maybe above the age of 6 to the age of 15-16, they had given during the time of COVID, so that they can attend online classes. A very noble gesture, everybody would say. But these apps were preloaded. These tablets were preloaded with Chinese apps. So they give you the Chinese side of the story, like Xiaomi and all these have Indian maps without Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh. So they had preloaded these apps. Now this is another these are another centers in Bangladesh that focus on again propagating BRI and how China and Bangladesh relationship is very important for the economic development of Bangladesh. This is Center for East Asia Foundation Bangladesh that basically does there's a magazine that they release that focuses only on BRI and how good BRI has been for the development of Bangladesh. And they if you go through their advisory board and people who are associated with it, a lot of important people are in the government and associated with it. Now, what they're doing through these grants and scholarships that the Chinese are giving, in India also, I think Vipendra sir will probably tell you about it more. But in Nepal, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, they cut across sections. It's not just the students that they are giving these fellowships and language scholarships or study research grants, but they're giving it even to diplomats, to bureaucrats, to journalists, academicians, of course, think tank community, then students, journalists, everyone. So they're using this tool, education, such a benign concept, to kind of cut across all sections of society. So next slide. Now, this Daffodil International University Belt and Road Research Center is the first fully funded Chinese research center. And they just focus on Belt and Road, and they hold forums and lectures on BRI. Again, building a narrative that is very positive for China and very positive for all the Chinese investments that are happening in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, like I said, Huawei and ZTE, there's also another aspect that Bangladesh and China have very good defense relationship. So a lot of Bangladesh army officers are getting trained in China, language and all. They're getting scholarships, 7,400, and then before the number of army officers that go on a very regular basis. And in fact, before they go, the Chinese embassy in Bangladesh, they host a reception for them before they go to China. Then so next slide. Then in all these countries, of course, you can see the advisory board also of this center that we just discussed, where actually Chinese are also on the advisory board. So then next slide, sir. Then this friendship associations, irrespective of which country they are a very important tool in the Chinese propaganda. In Bangladesh also, I've picked this very specific one because they're extremely active. China Bangladesh Friendship Center, and their president Ko Phe Lin, he's very active. So he knows almost all, how do I say, important people in Bangladesh army, air force, and diplomats. In fact, he's posed even with the president's daughter. So he has contacts with all these people, and he keeps inviting them for lavish parties. And this friendship center is a key in kind of doing a lot of propaganda for the Chinese in Bangladesh. And such friendship societies are also there in Sri Lanka, they're also there in Nepal, and of course we have in India also, in India China Friendship Association, that actually during the 1962 war, they were doing a march and saying, China is a friend, and let's not we it's India's fault that we attacked China. So this is the kind of friendship centers that, and how they operate. So I'm just, I've taken one example, that's education, think tanks, and how they are doing it through education. There are many aspects, multiple aspects that the Chinese are doing, but I think because we don't have much time, so I'm not able to cover everything. But this is something very important for us to understand, that how the Chinese are using something like education as a tool for their influence operations. Thank you. I'll just end here.
Thank you, Namrata, for that presentation. Quite covered extensively, actually, particularly education and think tanks. Thank you so much for that. I now request Ambassador Karna to speak. Before that, I wanted to ask participants, if you have any questions, please do post it in the chat box, referring to the speaker to whom you want to raise the question. We will take it up after all the three presentations are over. Ambassador, the time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deependra, and thank you for organizing such a wonderful program. And it's your organization, Law and Society Association. It's very timely, and I'm happy to share again with you and Namrata. It's a wonderful issues which has been discussed around the globe at the moment. And Nepal, when I see the Nepalese and Chinese engagement in Nepal, just I'm telling you, we have a poor visit in 2022 from China. From March to September, we have a top level uh, from the parties. The Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited, and then International Liaison Department head Liu Jinchao also visited, and then we have a visit of the Speaker of People's Congress. And there is another visit also by the five-member delegation by the Communist Party, and that was a low-level visit. But this three-level visit can show you how important Nepal is for the Chinese. So I'm looking at this during after President Xi became a on the realm of the power in China, we have seen that the Chinese engagement with Nepal has increased tremendously at different level. As Namrata mentioned, academic, media, business, sports, security forces, bureaucrats, and in Nepal, there are 25 institutions working with the Chinese embassy and Chinese government. As Namrata said, in the 2018, Chinese tried to establish a BRI institute in Nepal. But I don't know what happened, but they have started funding. At the time, it was said that 30 crore Nepali rupees has been distributed to different institutions of Nepal, and there are many working there are many institutions working for the promotion of the Chinese interest in Nepal. For Nepal, so this is the scene. One important thing. The second thing is about Nepal's political landscape. What is landscape? From 2008 to 2022, we have a 4 parliamentary election, 2 constituent assembly and 2 parliament elections. During all these elections, almost Communist Party vote is more than 55 to 60%. So total votes of the political landscape in Nepal is the left or the Communist Party vote is that much higher. It's sometimes 2-3% less or more or less than. This time it is little bit less in 2022 election. So you can imagine that they have an opportunity. So communist parties, there are many major 3 communist parties which are the mainstay for the Communist Party of China. During after President Xi visit in 2019, Chinese Communist Party organized virtual and physical training for the top leadership of the Communist Party leaders, where the former all 3 Communist Party, 4 Communist Party leaders participated in the training organized by the Chinese ideological department with the co-host by International Relations Department. And almost during 16 to 20, 16 to 19, after 22, this is little bit closed or due to COVID. Almost more than 2,000 leaders, local leaders, as well as district level, regional level, provincial level, and national level, leaders visited China for the training. So, and in 2019 September, Nepal Communist Party and Chinese Communist Party signed a memorandum of understanding where this ideological collaboration is mentioned in the treaty, in the agreement. So, Communist Party is the main backing. We are doing some infrastructure governance. Very interestingly, we found that in the Nepal, almost more than 80% of the infrastructure project at the moment in the Chinese company, whether it is funded by China or funded by World Bank, ADB. They are the lowest bidder and they get the tender. Almost all airport projects, almost 90% of the hydro projects, road projects, almost many of them are, except some by the Indians and some other countries. Major water, drinking water projects, all being constructed by occupied by the Chinese company. So, and all these projects were given to Chinese company or Chinese government during the rule of Communist Party. So this is the main important things to understand that how China is operating in Nepal. So and then after I'm just looking at the Tibet. Tibet is another central pillar between Nepal and China. Chinese has been from 1990 to till date, they are trying to influence the Nepal's bureaucracy, Nepal's political leadership, Nepal's security forces, and they are successfully managed this issue. And during the 2008 and Beijing Olympic and 2009, the anniversary 50th anniversary of Dalai Lama exit from Tibet. So during that, there was a protest in Kathmandu, and Nepal security forces has been successfully managed them. One of the guy, Tibetan, who is immolate in Kathmandu also. But it was, so there is a movement of any refugee or any Tibetan coming to Nepal is almost stopped. Second thing, after 1995, there are 5,000 Tibetan refugees without ID card in Kathmandu and other parts of Nepal. But the Nepal government refused to give ID card to them. And they are in a big problem to opening accounts, going to education, or going abroad for further study. They don't have any documents. So they are facing a huge problem. Just 1.5 years back, the Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba tried to, just I'm giving you one example, how influencing they are in our home ministry. Prime Minister called Home Secretary and other Home Ministry officials and asked them to start this IT card process. In half an hour, Chinese ambassador came to know and she visited almost all the leaders in the same day and they managed to stop this process. So it is a Tibetan issue. So after this settlement of the Tibetan issues, almost settlement, they moved to other parts in Nepal. The first important thing that they are trying to, they have a new strategic neighborhood policy where the engagement at different level. Students, one of our Trivandrum University, one of the department, International Relations Department, almost 30 students goes every year for one semester study in China. And they give 30 students a scholarship for 30 students every year. So, and there are a huge number of scholarships is given with a very good amount of money. Or almost 1,500 bureaucrats got training in Chinese different institutions. Still, now it is started again. Recently, there are two batches of the Finance Ministry official and Infrastructure Ministry official visited China for 2 weeks for the training. And the media, coming to the media, is a huge number. Media, there are two things in Nepal. There are huge influence in Nepalese media, Chinese influence in Nepal. The one important thing that the major business, those who own the company, media company, they have another business with the Chinese company. So that how they influencing the media owners. Number one, there is one thing. Second thing, they have invested almost 6 or 7 television channels directly funding. And then there are advertisement, and then there are a lot of funding through the back channels. Almost 6, 7 television channels, many media outlets who are not even publishing any negative news of the China. Earlier 90s, that was the everywhere there was the news about that one. But after 2005-6, the China has managed Nepalese media in a very effective way. And people say nobody can, the prove it, because that's how the money is transferred. So Chinese companies working in Nepal, they actually working on behalf of the Communist Party of China. They're working on the government of China. The Chinese company, those who are working in Nepal. So the first thing they are trying to build, earlier 70s, 80s, even 90s, Chinese, whenever our delegation go to China, they used to tell us that you have to keep good relation with India because it has a good, you have to good neighborhood, and that's why you have to keep good relations with India. But now, from 2006 onward, it is changed. They are not talking about it. They are talking about how to reduce the influence of China, India and USA, especially Western power in Nepal. So they are talking in the media training, lot of scholars, the journalists, academician, business. There are huge amount of. Can you imagine? There are some organizations. I am sometimes surprised. China Nepal Tarai Journalist Association. It is in working in Janakpur. China Nepal Sports Association in Nepal. So in such there are a lot. So it's in the media there are very huge influence, and they are trying to influence Nepal's bureaucracy. If you see when the President Xi visited in Nepal, he has mentioned there are 3 things. He said, just he said the new blueprint of our relationship, a strategic communication, elevation of our relationship. And the first time the Chinese president said a strategic partnership. Earlier, it was all leaders said that the comprehensive partnership. But in 2019 October, when he visited, he said uh, that it's a strategic partnership with Nepal. And one of the things he spoke in Kathmandu, no leaders of the world selected other countries to threaten other countries. During his visit, there was a democratic movement in Hong Kong, and there was a discussion in British Parliament, and the US Congress has passed some resolution. So during that time, what is said in Kathmandu that any country who try to encroach, influence in China's internal matter, they will be making pieces like a dust. That is the word he spoke in Kathmandu during official meeting with the president of Nepal. So just imagine. And another important things what I have seen that the coercive diplomacy. Recently, in 2000 December 31st, Chinese embassy said that the Pokhara airport is a BRI project. The next day, it was the inauguration in Pokhara. Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal went to Pokhara to inaugurate the project. Chinese embassy in the just one day earlier said that we don't have any project signed under BRI project. BRI is a big problem at the moment facing in Nepal, and negotiations are not in a conducive way. So there is a, because of the loan interest rate, so they make it. And the Chinese ambassador in last year, in April or May, she said 5 type of cooperation under BRI. Even she mentioned that the project being constructed by the Chinese company. Yeah.
Miss Geeta, please mute your audio.
Ambassador, please continue. Ambassador, you are on mute.
Yeah, sorry. So it's a Chinese company making any project, whether it is a government of India money, or government of other countries money, or it's the World Bank ADB money, or government of Nepal money. If it is being built by Chinese company, it is comes under BRI. So anything China is doing in Nepal is a BRI. That is what she said. And it is very surprising. It's something looking the very coercive diplomacy for a small neighbor. Second thing, during the Americans project, which is called MCC, so that during the ratification of that project, Chinese foreign ministry making a statement against America and telling that the MCC is Americans are doing coercive diplomacy in Nepal, just threatening Nepal. So unnecessarily China entered Nepal's bilateral relations with America, as if we have given our authority to China to speak on our behalf. And during that MCC ratification and earlier, Chinese fake hate and misinformation campaign was done in Kathmandu against American development projects. So these are, I mean that they are what the Chinese non-engagement during the Sher Bahadur Deuba government, China stopped almost all engagement with Nepal. When MCC was passed, and then all top leaders visited Nepal, and everybody coming to Nepal, meeting Prime Minister and almost all the communist leaders and asking them why you ratified this project, American projects in Nepal. They are not talking about Nepal China projects, but they are talking about Nepal American projects. Why you signed this MCC and this is not in your interest. They give lecture on all these issues. Whenever they met either the Prime Minister or any minister, our foreign minister was in 2002 in China, and again there is this issue. So actually, it's a operation in Nepal is a very effectively managed through three instruments. First is I'm telling you that the media and the communist parties, and then different Chinese organizations. And the one very important thing here, you understand, whenever there is a problem uh, with India, in any sort, whether on the trade, on the border, or any issue, China come in. Our leaders try to get benefit of that one. So this is from very beginning, from 60s to till date, it is continued. But this time, what happened that the Chinese are influencing almost all institutions. Our some bureaucracy, the finance ministries, foreign aid division, is a very good institution which has been talking about Nepal's interest and working on it. They have always Chinese complain about this government institution that they couldn't understand. BRI, they have been insisting to sign project implementation agreement. Interest rate is 4%, 2% service charge and 2% holding charge. So it is a very, Nepal has never taken commercial loan. It is good from our government. I can say that Nepal has never taken commercial loan. Paying period is a 10 to 15 years of the BRI. However, Nepal has never taken a loan less than 25 years. And the India gives us less than 1% interest. Prime Minister Modi, when he was in 2014 in Kathmandu, he promised in our parliament, speaking and said that $1 billion he promised, almost half of it has been already used and the process of remaining money, but it is less than 1%. World Bank give us loan less than 1%. ADB from 1% to 2%. Other Saudi funds and there are other countries, which Kuwait fund, they are all about soft loan. We never go to commercial loan. But this BRI project, you all aware about the Sri Lanka, Pakistan, many countries are in the trouble. So Nepalese political leaders at the moment, when all these top leaders visited Nepal, the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister and other leaders said that we are not ready for the loan, we are ready for soft loan, even the grants. So that's why it is 6th year already completed for the BRI agreement, but there is no project signed. That's why Chinese, whatever the projects, actually that Pokhara Airport is a Exim Bank loan, which is signed, started process in 2013, 2012 actually. And then the treaty agreement was signed in 2016 and project started in 2016. The time period for the payment is
Ambassador, last 2 minutes.
very less. Yeah, okay. So I mean that the operations are almost in the same way in almost all countries. Only differences in Nepal is that the communist population and the communist parties working in the interest of the Chinese government. And they are just telling you one example how BRI is signed. When BRI was signed, the Prime Minister Prachand was at the time, and the Foreign Minister was Nepali Congress. Finance Minister was then from the Communist Party. Maoist party. So there was a condition which was a very difficult condition. There was one condition, say the free trade agreement with Nepal, which Nepal refused. And then there was another point mentioned that the policy harmonization. And whenever our leaders and our bureaucrats met with the Chinese leaders, they always complain about our bureaucracy, that they couldn't understand our relationship. However, bureaucracy took very good stand on negotiating on the loan contract. Another big issue with the Nepal and China is that we have forced to buy 6 aeroplanes, which was not operated even 6 months actually. So we have a big, and now we are paying it, and all the planes are ideally at the airport. Almost 6 year almost completed to all the planes, and Chinese actually enforce us to buy all these planes for the domestic, and which is not, and they never supported the any training or the parts and all. And our, I mean, the flag carrier Nepal Airlines is in a big trouble of the. There are other problems with the airlines, but this is one of the loan that the how they did. They offered one plane free of cost, and the 5 plane you have to buy. So it's a very good way that the Chinese companies getting tender in Nepal is that the lowest bidder subsidized by the Communist Party and the government of China, so that they are the lowest bidder in almost all international tenders. I close here. If there is any question, please.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for this wonderful presentation, touching upon the entire gamut of issues relating to China influence operations in Nepal. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thanks for being here today. Now it is my turn to make a presentation on the Chinese influence operations in India. Before I do that, I request all participants, if you have any questions, please do put it in the chat box. I see a couple of questions already there. We'll take it up as soon as I complete my presentation. I'm going to be using slides. I generally do not use slides, but Namrata has encouraged me to use slides, so I'll be doing that. Just bear with me for a minute. I'll share that slide. So are you able to see the slide? If you can just confirm, Namrata.
It's visible, sir, your slides.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I'm going to be covering this Chinese influence operations in India. First and foremost, let me just introduce that we have conducted a study on the subject, and we have published this particular report. There was a question whether Chinese operations in India will be published or not. I just want to mention to that lady who has asked the question that we have already published this particular report. We studied, about 9 sectors in particular. I already mentioned how we started this particular study. It all started with the 2020 Ladakh conflict, when we noticed that there were intellectuals, the so-called intellectuals of the nation, writing pro-China articles and thrashing the Indian government and the Indian army for the conflict that the China enforced on the Indian armed forces in Ladakh. So we started probing the individuals who started writing the articles. What is their background? Which organization do they represent? Where did they do their education? Whether they have ever traveled to China before? So this kind of a probe was conducted by us, trying to track their backgrounds, and we found out the links started emerging one by one, and we identified about 9 sectors where this influence operation has been going on in India. We studied the entertainment industry, which is a major important industry in India, and we all know how the entertainment industry has a big impact on the psyche of the people. In some parts of India, particularly in South India, like Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh and all, film stars are huge icons, and people even give up their lives for the sake of their icons. So that's the kind of influence that the entertainment industry has. We did a research on that. Then we also did a research on the think tanks and society, civil society organizations. Namrata has touched upon that particular topic slightly and indicated to what sort of influence operations happens there. And the third aspect we touched is the Chinese embassy and the Indian academia links. What is the link and what is the influence operation that the Chinese embassy here do on the Indian academic institutions, both in the private and the public sector? So we studied that. And the fourth aspect we studied was the Indian media, how the Indian media is influenced by the Chinese. Fifth aspect is the social media influences, how most of these social media influences are already in the pockets of the Chinese, the embassy staff and the influence operations, the agencies. Namrata has already talked about which are the agencies that conduct these operations, so I will not touch upon that. We also explored the tech sector in India, where how the Chinese have been investing money and trying to influence that important sector where, today you find that almost 60 to 70% of the smartphones that people use, the coverage of the mobile phones is quite huge today. Even a rickshaw puller, you will find him having a smartphone in his hand. And if you look at the smartphone, it's a Chinese smartphone. So we looked at the Chinese tech sector investments in India and how they are influencing the fintech and edutech sectors also. Then we also looked at the Chinese influence operations, both covert and overt operations in India, and also looked at the traders, how the traders were influenced, and last but not the least, the political influence that they wield among the political estate, the polity in India. So these were the 9 sectors we touched up. So before I deal with it, let me just show you an important slide. I don't know how many of you recognize this person. This person's name is Mr. Sridhar Vembu. Why I am talking about this? Let us understand why I am talking about this. This gentleman is a very important billionaire industrialist from India. He worked in the US for a very long time and returned to India to he actually transferred his Zoho Corporation's headquarters to a remote village in Tamil Nadu, in Tenkasi district, where I was born. There he has set up this Zoho Corporation's headquarters and he's working from there. He's running his entire global operation. He's a billionaire industrialist working from a remote village in Tamil Nadu, creating skill development centers there. Why I'm talking about this particular slide is that Mr. Sridhar Vembu is a member of the National Security Advisory Board of India, which is an important national security advisory organization in the security setup of the country. And this was a hit job done through the media. The Forbes magazine, this is a private issue that Mr. Sridhar Vembu is facing. He's been going through a divorce proceedings in the US. He has filed a divorce case against his wife. That proceeding is going on. So the Forbes magazine used that opportunity to do a hit job and hit at his credibility, to tarnish his image and to demolish his credibility as a person who has a lot of national interest. His personal issues were highlighted in this particular article. If you want to go and take a look at it, if you can do that. Why I am saying that is that the Chinese have been tracking several important people in India from various sectors and trying to find out any loopholes somewhere which they can use to. If the person is of orientation towards national interest, then you hit his credibility. If through any personal problems, anything that you can lay your hands on, or you try to influence that person, that important person, to work pro-China. So that is the strategy that they've adopted in India. And Sridhar Vembu became a victim of this hit job. Why I talk about the Forbes magazine? Not many people know that the Forbes magazine is now a Chinese magazine. One of the Chinese Hong Kong-based company called as Magnum Opus Acquisition bought the Forbes magazine in 2001, and the Forbes India, which is a subsidiary of Forbes Global Media Holdings is now controlled by Communist China. Please remember, Forbes is a very credible media organization, very credible magazine. The Chinese are purchasing these magazines and getting hold of these magazines so that they can do hit jobs on important personalities. They're not doing it just in India, but they're doing it worldwide. We are concerned more about India, so I'm talking about it just for your benefit. So this acquisition is basically clear use of the money power of the Chinese to gain influence, and and also to become a spoke in the national security wheel of nations, especially in India as an important target nation for influence operations by the Chinese. So that is why I'm highlighting this. This is a Chinese-owned media organization. Right. So now I will, move on to the entertainment industry. But China has been adopting well-measured efforts and has been cultivating assets in various sectors, including entertainment industry, journalists, academic scholars, practitioners such as diplomats and media, military officers, scientists, important strategic sectors like nuclear, space, defense scientists, and politicians, and also tech honchos to so that they become the ambassadors for China, so that they become the voice of China in India. I will highlight why this is problematic. Of course, the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations actually allows the diplomats to do some amount of interaction with the civil society in the receiving nation. But it also, Section 4 allows that, but Section 41, sorry, Article 4 allows that leverage. But Article 41 actually restricts certain activities that they should not do, including interfering in the local politics and local affairs of any country. So there is both leverage and also some restriction that the Vienna Convention actually imposes. So let's understand that from that point of view. If your influence operation is sinister, if it is against the interest of the receiving nation, then I think that is problematic. That is why China is a problematic area, whereas all nations, this is a question that I'm sure somebody will ask, why, if every nation does this kind of activity, even India provides scholarships and other things to students from abroad, from Afghanistan and African nations. So when the intention is sinister, then there is a problem. If it is benign, then there is no problem as far as these kind of activities are concerned. So that is why I'm insisting on that. Now let us just touch upon this particular entertainment industry. I'll quickly run through. I have about 30 slides. I'll spend less than 30 seconds on each of the slides. So please bear with me on that. We'll finish it by before 7:30. So this is a photograph that I wanted to show you. This is Shah Rukh Khan. Everybody is able to identify him, and also Kabir Khan. Kabir Khan is a filmmaker, and Shah Rukh Khan is a huge star in Bollywood. See, look at the influence operations. The Chinese invited both these important people from the industry in Mumbai to China to attend the China-India film co-production dialogue at the Beijing International Film Festival in 2019. After that, what happened? The Chinese have started collaborating with Indian film production houses and trying to dictate narratives in the films. So they've started with their money power. They are investing money in production of movies, and they are dictating how the movies will be run. What is the story narrative that the movies will do? I will talk about the Pathan. Pathan got into a controversy. Let us look at it only from the point of national security. The Pathan movie shows a raw officer, a research and analysis officer, as the villain in this movie. It shows that he has gone rogue and he is acting against the Indian interests. Is this the kind of impact that we want film industry to have on the Indian mindset? So this is the question that we need to pose. So I am opposed to this Pathan movie precisely for this reason. And it shows a Pakistani ISI agent to be a very benign and a person who's helping the Indian security agencies to eliminate this particular raw agent. So is that the kind of impact that we want? So that is a question that we need to ask. So let us look at the influence operation. This is a very popular movie called as Rockstar, which was acted by, the lead role was played by Ranbir Kapoor. I'm sure all of you would have heard of this very popular song Sada Hak, which where they showed, this particular Free Tibet movement is shown there. Initially, this Free Tibet banner was shown in the movie, but what happens later? They kind of, did away with the Tibet name there. They only, wanted to obliterate that particular idea of Free Tibet through this particular thing. Whereas the same song, if you had watched it carefully, it shows the Khalistani movement, in a much more clearer manner. So this is again an influence operation by the Chinese on the Central Board of Film Certification. So this is an example of how the narratives are built by the in the film industry by the Chinese. So they've also gone on to promote movies in China. They said this particular movie Dangal was shown in film theaters in China, and it earned about 500 crores. So they promote these kind of movies and also prop up some film actors and film personalities so that they gain more influence. So now I'll move on to the civil society and the think tank engagement that they do. I'll quickly talk about this particular effort that the Chinese embassy has been doing. This event is hosted, by China India Youth Dialogue. I think Namrata also covered it, so I'll not deal much about it. What they do is they float these kind of organizations, civil society organizations, to influence the mindset of the intelligentsia in India, to create people, to create the fifth column. I call them as the fifth column, who work inside India, trying to rot the Indian system from within. Basically, Sun Tzu's art of war strategy of rotting the enemy nation from within. So that is the effort. They use this fifth column to do that. They float different organizations. I'm going to run through this because we don't have much time. So this particular organization, China India Youth Dialogue, also has a tie-up with the All China Youth Federation, which is again a Communist Party of China's organization. So look at the link up that they do. In fact, with regard to think tanks, I have listed in my report various think tanks. I have named them. They've all been funded by the Chinese embassies. Big names, people who host Raisina dialogues, to several institutes which do China studies. All of them have been influenced by the Chinese. All of them have been given money to win over their loyalty, and also they have placed people who are loyal to the Chinese in important administrative positions in these institutions. So this is the kind of influence operation effort that China has been doing with regard to the think tanks and civil society. This is again another civil society they have formed. This particular Asian Century Foundation changed its name to Asian Century Foundation in 2022 after the Ladakh conflict happened. So till then, they had a very pro-China name. In fact, there was a backlash because of that, and they had to change the name to Asian Century Foundation. This was very active in creating a pro-China opinion in India. Their leaders, their top administrative management people used to write glowing tributes to China in their articles in several Indian publications. So this particular foundation was set up precisely for this reason. And suddenly this Asian Century Foundation has vanished into thin air. So you are not able to find it anymore. Their website is also now dormant, or it's no more active. So this is the kind of after our report actually was published, we highlighted this particular organization, and it kind of vanished into thin air. So these are some of the things that we have covered in our report. Lutyens think tank dedicated to China studies. It projects itself to be neutral, but aggressively promotes pro-China sentiments in India. They have a tie-up with Harvard Yenching Institute. And also, as I mentioned, the top management are pro-China people. They have been planted there by the Chinese embassy. So there are different other organizations also. One particular think tank I mentioned, Raisina Doyle think tank, it received some 5 to 6 crore rupees as grants from the Chinese embassy in the recent years to do pro-China studies. So there is another think tank from Rajasthan, Udaipur-based think tank, which was hosted by the Chinese while the Ladakh conflict was still going on, and they came back and wrote. Some of their people came back and wrote articles blaming India for the problem, and also they went completely silent, never mentioned any East Turkestan human rights violation or all other inhuman activities that the communist China indulges in. So this is again another, the embassy is hosting them within the embassy, these kind of, and this particular youth leader of this particular organization had great access and also funding from the Chinese embassy. Okay, this is a publication by one of the think tanks, India-China Chronicle. All rubbish pro-China articles that are published here, again, completely funded by the Chinese embassy. You have to read them to know what I'm talking about. So I'm now moving on to the academia. There are a lot of institutions, particularly there are two privately funded universities in Sonipat, which are completely, which run China study centers, which is nothing but the pseudonym for the Confucius Institute, to completely influence the mind of young academicians. The PhD scholars there are given pro-China topic to do their PhDs. So these are some of the study circles that are run by these institutes. In fact, you will be surprised to know publicly funded institutions like the IIM Shillong and an IIT Madras also have pro-China elements who are running the Confucius Institutes in different names. It's quite shocking. They have been receiving huge sums of money from the Chinese embassy to run these pro-China centers and to influence the young minds in the academia. So just imagine if all the intelligent people in the country are brainwashed to become China's stooges. So what will be the impact? What will be the kind of intellectual impact that it will have in the Indian nation, say 10 years or 20 years from now? So Jindal Global University celebrating this China Confucius Institute. Okay, so now we'll talk about media. I'm not sure any of you identify the person on the extreme left. His name is Rajiv Sharma. He's an Indian journalist. He was writing for several Indian publications as a freelance journalist, and a person who has been long-standing journalist in India. He had free access to the Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Defense. I have particularly seen him with very confidential documents in his hand, and I used to wonder where does he get them? All documents which are marked as confidential and the superlative categorization of secrecy. So he was arrested a couple of years back and currently is in jail, in prison, for having received money and passing on key documents to his Chinese handlers based in India. And he was being funded by a trader who was doing trade with China based in Noida. So these two people on the right, in the middle and the right, were employees of the trader, and they were funding him quite heavily. And what surprises me is that he was receiving huge patronage among diplomats and bureaucrats who were giving him information and documents. So I think there is a requirement to probe and make a list of these bureaucrats and start checking them. So we also know about these are Chinese apps, news apps, which were influencing the Indian mind, providing important news items during the Galwan conflict. These are some of the advertisements that were placed by China to buy the influence in Indian media houses in key publications. I have The previous one was Hindustan Times. This is the Indian Express. So these kind of color ads, page ads cost crores of rupees. Mind you, these are crores of rupees, and if it has to be published in say 12, 14 editions across the country, the crores will multiply into those many. So such amount of money was being spent by these. What is the quid pro quo for these kind of advertisements? My next slide will show you the quid pro quo. Here is a very pumped up article to plug the China narrative in the Indian minds, how China bet extreme poverty and what lessons it holds for China. Somebody needs to do some kind of a fact check on this particular news item to know how much of it is fact or how much of it is quid pro quo. Mind you, the advertisement that I showed earlier was published on October 1, and this article was published on October 11th, just 10 days later. So you can now link the quid pro quo there. So this is again another article from the Global Times, published from Chennai. I'm sorry, the Hindu. I'm talking about the Hindu. The Hindu newspaper is absolutely the Global Times of from Chennai. So again, they are arguing in pro-China in their articles. So these are some of the. I know one of my friend Nitin Gokhale. He published. He's a journalist. He published a news item comparing Xi Jinping with Hitler, and there was a backlash from the embassy which threatened him that I will not issue any visa to you to travel to China. So this is another influence operation. How do they influence? They pay you money, or they will facilitate visas for scholars, journalists to travel to China and do a conducted tour of China to show you only the positives that they want to show you, so that you come back and write only positive articles about them when you write even a thesis that you write. In fact, China has been organizing and running a scholarship program for students, for journalists, and there are several journalists from India who are already availed this. The scholarship is for 1 year. The journalists are taken at the expense of China to Beijing, and they are given accommodation which is worth several thousand yuans in the diplomatic enclave area. They are provided accommodation in diplomatic area. Monthly rent there would be about 22,000 yuans. That's the amount of which is about 2.5 lakh in the Indian rupee terms. So they also give a monthly allowance of 6,000 yuan, which is about 68,000 rupees in Indian terms. So they are given access to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China and other. They are taken on tours, conducted tours, and they are made to come back and write articles while in Beijing. And the articles are vetted by the Chinese to ensure that there is nothing negative that the journalist is writing. And several Indian media houses have sent their journalists to do that, and they come back and to Beijing and to write stories for the publications in India. See, look at the kind of influence operation. In fact, I know a particular journalist who went for 1 year and his scholarship was extended by another year. 2 years he did it, and after that, through Chinese funding, he is now pursuing a major master's course in journalism in a very popular American university, which is based in New York. And mind you, this particular journalist, when he comes back to India, I will expose him. This person will come back to India and get position of editor of any of the major publications in India. Once he studied in the American university, then he will get the editor post. That is the kind of influence operation that the Chinese have done on journalists in India. So this is just to highlight that aspect. Okay, so let's move on to the social media. The 50 Cent Army, we have all heard about it. This is an army of social media activists. Namrata did mention it. Twitter is banned in China, but there are a lot of these 50 Cent Army activists who are paid by the China to be on Twitter and to counter any negative information or news against China. They will fall on you like a load of bricks, and they will try to discredit you and do all that. They troll you completely if you do anything against China, and they also complain to the social media organizations against us so that your handle is blocked or something like that. Law and Society Alliance and my handles have been a victim of this kind of complaints from the Chinese whenever I have exposed them. Yeah, again, social media influencers. The person on the top was a former military officer. He runs a media house in Delhi, and he's a major influencer in. And if you go and look at his tweets, you will find that he gets his retweets and sabashi only from Pakistan and Chinese handles. So he needs to be taken care of, I think. So Ghazala Wahab, again, another journalist who is associated with Praveen Sani. During the Galwan, the Ladakh conflict, he has been writing articles and tweets against Indian interests. So this needs to be taken care of. Where does he get this funding? His magazine doesn't run. He doesn't get any advertisements. There is no revenue. Where does he get his funding? Probably their probe needs to be done. So these are several tech industry players where the Chinese have invested. In fact, when the 5G trials were India was considering and planning 5G trials, there was one particular cellular operators of India association who top honchos were arguing in favor of ZTE and Huawei, whereas India wants to do it under the Make in India initiative. Whereas there were these kind of operators who were working for these major mobile companies, Chinese mobile companies, who were, and also some representatives of these trade association, who were batting for the Chinese company, Huawei, and whereas the Huawei and ZTE are kind of banned all over the world because of their intelligence operations and spying operations that they were carrying out through their network. So this is something that we have. Okay, so I'm almost at the end of my presentation. We'll end it as quickly as possible. Yeah, I think we have exceeded our time, but bear with me for that because this is a very important presentation. This is regarding politics. We all know about how the Indian National Congress had signed the MOU with the Chinese Communist Party. Similarly, you will find that, as Ambassador Karna mentioned, since like in Nepal, the communist parties are completely influenced by the Chinese Communist Party. Similarly, all the communist parties in India are completely influenced and maybe even funded by the Chinese today. These photographs are of the Chinese embassy officials going and interacting with the communist parties' representatives in their office. So that is okay. This is Pinarayi Vijayan, who is a CPIM leader and the Chief Minister of Kerala. If you go and track his Twitter feed, you will only find pro-China tweets most often than not. So, paying tributes to Xi Jinping and the Communist Party of China. So they have no other job but to do this. Probably they are paid 2 rupees every day for the tweets. So this is a page from the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, which is run by the Congress Party's top leadership, the Gandhi families. So here there is a highlight of how a high-level delegation from RGF paid an official visit to China, and there are names of all the people. It includes some ministers from the UPA government, former ministers, some journalists, some think tank personalities, who's who basically of academia. All of them were part of the delegation. So, I find all these people a little foolish because we tracked all their activities through their annual reports. So thank you so much. Before I leave, I just want to tell you one important thing. Please don't think that the present ruling party was never influenced. Before 2020, this government and the ruling party was also influenced very much. There were delegation level visits by the BJP to China for a very long time. But 2020 Ladakh conflict became an eye opener for the party, and also to the government. Now they have completely cut off their relationship with the Communist Party of China. That is something that I wanted to highlight, because Law and Society Alliance is a non-partisan organization, so we don't spare anybody as far as playing second fiddle to China is concerned. We will never spare anybody. Whoever does it will take it from us. So in conclusion, I just want to mention one last word. The concept of the CCP, the Communist Party of China, as far as influence operation, is threefold. They have a united front, which Namrata has already covered. And there is also called as three warfare concept, under which they do, one of the thing is lawfare. Lawfare is nothing but initiating legal cases against all those people who make the Chinese uncomfortable in the receiving nations, wherever, in India, US, wherever you find somebody who's working against the CCP, they will target them through legal cases. That is one of the, and also they do, create public opinion and psychological warfare. These are the second aspect. The third aspect is called as active measures, and this is the most important aspect as far as all these people whom we have exposed today. This includes disinformation, counterfeiting, sabotage, discrediting operations, destabilizing the governments, the foreign governments which are not aligned to pro-China thought. Then provocations against people, false flag operations, manipulations, and aimed at weakening the social cohesion. That's what I talked about. Sun Tzu's rotting the enemy nation from within. That's the idea. And for all this, the Chinese Communist Party recruits useful idiots from respective nations. In this case, we are talking about the useful idiots in India. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you so much for being patient. I'll stop this presentation and we can take up question and answers if there are any. So if anybody wants to ask a question, please do post it. I think there's one question which has come from one of the organizations in India. They are asking, can you please explain about Chinese influence operations in Myanmar? Namrata or Ambassador, you would like to handle it, or may I try to respond in limited words?
I think Namrata can do it.
Uh,
Myanmar. I'm not aware much about this Myanmar operation.
Okay. Uh, we've done some study, but not a very detailed study on this. But of course, Myanmar is heavily influenced when it comes to, the Chinese influence operations. In fact, their military junta is very much in tandem with the Chinese. Plus, of course, their politicians and businesses. In fact, I know of something that, yeah, in some Indian companies, in fact, wanted to um, do something with the Myanmaris, and the deal was almost like finalized, but later on it was cancelled, and the information that we got was that it was due to the Chinese influence, because they did not want any Indian companies operating in certain zones. So Myanmar also, it's very deep. You'll be surprised that actually, when we are talking about the influence operations, it's because we are talking about India, South Asia. So, we have a feeling that it's just limited here. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. In fact, I met someone a few days back. I was informed that 60% of the Canadian MPs are actually influenced by the Chinese. So the influence operations is everywhere. Myanmar also in all different fields. Most of their the investments that are being done by the Chinese companies there, and they have, like I said, very close relationship with the military, with the politicians. In fact, they're very influential there, even when it comes to their domestic politics. So Myanmar, these are areas also to be explored. I think after South Asia, maybe Southeast Asia and all these places can be another aspect. So, I can't give you details in numbers and all, but yeah, the influence operation is a lot in Myanmar also.
Thank you, Namrata. I just want to add to what you have stated already. In fact, I have had the opportunity to visit Myanmar some time back, and I did observe a lot of Chinese influence there. In fact, I want to refer the person who has asked this question, the institution, to go and take a look at some of the reports of United States Institute of Peace. They have done a study on Myanmar's internal conflicts and how China carries out influence operations there. And also, you may want to take a look at the Economist's write-up on this particular subject. Also, Council on Foreign Relations has done a study. You may want to take a look at that also. Just to add, in fact, the modus operandi as far as influence operations in Myanmar is almost the same. These are the principles by which they go. The infrastructure development. We all know Napidaw's airport has been built by the Chinese. There is a lot of huge investments in power projects all across North Myanmar. Several infrastructure projects are taken care of by the Chinese. So, of course, the media influence operations, the think tank influence operations, the political parties, both the previous government and the junta, all of them have clear-cut, strong ties with the CCP, and they are all influenced by them. It's a fact. I have not done an in-depth study on the subject, so I'm giving you just pointers as to where you want to take a look at it. Maybe if you allow us time, we will do some research on this particular thing, and we can make a presentation, especially for the institution that has asked this question some other time. Thank you very much for that question. We also have a question from one of the journalism professors, Mr. Sivaji Sharkar, who is actually a guide and a mentor to me. He's asked, can Pakistan and Sri Lanka come out of the BRI pressure that they have? That's a very, very interesting and an important question. Namrata, you want to take that up since you deal with Sri Lanka?
Okay, so as far as Pakistan is concerned, see, I mean, forget, our relationship with Pakistan, but when it comes to Pakistan, like China is, if I can say, omnipresent in Pakistan right now. Pakistan is in such deep debt, and it's, of course, Chinese, you must have read the recent thing also, how the Chinese have, they're trying to bail them out. Now, when it comes to the Chinese strategy, Pakistan is extremely important, you know. So, if you look at the BRI projects in Pakistan, the Gwadar port, the Chinese have exclusive rights. In fact, the Chinese did not start the work till the time they got exclusive rights of the port. And Gwadar area is the only area where the Chinese have actually given aid to Pakistan and not loans to develop that area. So it's just not Gwadar port, but Gwadar International Airport and the region around it. And Gwadar, this port, I mean, the area that has a 10 feet high wall, so the locals cannot even know what is going inside. Okay, so the influence of the Chinese are immense. In fact, I'll give you one very small example. I don't know if you guys, I mean, you've observed, there was at least before, this is before COVID, news was leaked from Pakistan that what the Chinese are doing, they're actually because there are so many number, more than 1 lakh Chinese workers and engineers were there in Pakistan at that point of time. What the Chinese had started doing was they were targeting Pakistani women, and what they were doing was they were giving them false promises of marriage, and also they were saying that one male member of your family will be sent off to China. So the brides that were 13 years, 15 years, and this whole racket was exposed by one girl. She was 15 years old, who called one of the local news channels. It's called ARY, and it's actually now under, the Chinese have completely destroyed that news channel. The Chinese embassy had to come out with a statement saying that nothing like this is happening. The influence is so much. Imagine a society like Pakistan. Of course, the targets were Christian Pakistanis, not right now, not the Muslim Pakistanis. And the news, if you even search now, You will not find it anywhere. The Chinese kind of did away with whatever was leaked, and the Chinese are there. They're so close with the Pakistani army. And there was an article published in the Chinese language where these guys very specifically said that Pakistan now will become a country that is going to be a basically it will be used by the Chinese to fulfill their geostrategic ambitions. So they're going to use Pakistan. And I'll tell you this very clearly. When we were in China, we were interacting with a few Chinese academicians, and they very openly said that first we used to buy Pakistanis, now we'll buy the whole of Pakistan. And they were like, you have won 3 wars against Pakistan, fourth you cannot win because we are there. There are so many Chinese private security organizations present in China. 30,000 security personals are there in China. And they also had military exercises right at the border, Pakistan India border. So Pakistan is deeply associated with the Chinese. In fact, China has a very special term because Chinese have like strategic partnerships. They define their strategic partnerships with each country. Pakistan has a unique category in that. And they call them, brothers with iron brothers and all, and they're deeply engrossed. So Pakistan I don't think. Sri Lanka, you have seen the kind of, the problem is that when the Rajapaksa government was there, now when the government is signing all the deals, the port is already there for 99 years. Even if a government comes that wants to take their country out of this deep economic crisis, it's extremely difficult. The things that are signed, you cannot unsign them. Look at Maldives also. Now they're trying to balance it out. But they very clearly stated the deals that have been signed with the Chinese, how can we take it back? So when it comes to Pakistan and Sri Lanka especially, look at the economic crisis that they are having. So they're deeply in 99 years, Hamman Tota is already gone. So for 99 years, it's like, 100 years. So it's already gone. So I feel it's very difficult. We did a presentation in one of the French Defense Institutes into 2018. So we were talking about what BRI is and how countries should not join BRI. There was a very important question that one in the audience asked me. They're like, what are the alternatives then for these countries? Now, if a country like Sri Lanka, if a country like some country in Africa, they want to develop, what are their options? The Chinese are very smart in this. They just go, they tell them, they will talk to them, what do you want? They'll be like, okay, we want maybe a football stadium or we want a school. They'll be like, great, done, beautiful thing done. Plus, how much do you want for yourself? That's how they operate. So you have to understand that what are the alternatives? Which country can actually provide the kind of money that the Chinese are putting up in these countries initially when they're coming in the debt crisis? So that's the question that we all have to ask. It's extremely difficult. They want development. What are the alternatives that, these people have? And like I said, the politicians are bought over, the army is involved. Three of us have presented how deep the Chinese influence operations are. So for I think Pakistan and Sri Lanka, I find it, extremely. For Pakistan, I think there is no road ahead without China as for now.
Yeah, if Pakistan exists after a few years. Right. So that's, look at Afghanistan. After the Taliban takeover, what happened to all the diplomatic contracts that were signed? So a situation of that sort need to happen for both Pakistan and Sri Lanka to get out of the Chinese grip. Otherwise, it won't be possible. Okay, so we have another question from one of the participants, Rahul Malhotra. He has a question to the ambassador. Sir, he wants to know how does India tackle these kind of Chinese influence operations in Nepal, especially in media and bureaucracy? If you have any insights into that, please do share.
Can you tell me again, please?
question is how has or can India tackle the Chinese influence operations in Nepal, particularly the media and the bureaucracy?
Look, the investment, the way the Chinese doing is not supposed by any democratic country. There are other way of working on it. So, but as Namrata said, that they bribed the leaders, they bribed the bureaucrats, they bribed the security forces, they bribed our all border armed police forces, so that they can manage the Tibetan issues in the border, even somebody across. So this is the another way of working. Sometimes one of my friends, Inspector General Force, once he told me that earlier his people wanted to go to southern border, but now they are happy to go to northern border because they get some money and materials from the Chinese side, Chinese government officials. They bribe our people. So this is look, but I'm just telling you on media. In 80s and 90s, we have a 4 5 journalists from India, Times of India, PTI, and then we have Hindustan Times correspondent and the All India Radio correspondent in Kathmandu. But now there is none. For China, Xinhua news agencies, the very good building they have established in Kathmandu. They have almost 26 people working in Kathmandu. And then there are others representative. But the priority for Indian medias are less. Even the government of India media, which is supported by the government of India, are no more in Kathmandu. But earlier there are a lot. But now the priority of Indian media is less in Kathmandu. And the Indian media is very less. And the priorities, even the priority sector, when we see, can I tell you one example? When it was India facilitated peace treaty in Nepal with Maoist and 7 political parties. When the signing ceremony was done, all the Indian media was doing with the cricket. There was no news about that big events of your neighbors. So the priority has been shifted. So it needs to be the presence there, and then your media strategy policies can be developed. I mean that you cannot work like the what the Chinese do, but you can work like a democratic country. What you can do as a media, that is one of the for bureaucracy. Earlier, the India government provide a huge number of training at the administrative college, at the Institute of Forestry in Dehradun, then in the Hyderabad, in Delhi, there are a lot of institutions which provides a scholarship to the and the training for the Nepalese bureaucracy. But now it's very limited, very few. Even the Agriculture Institute, although there are almost 3,000 scholarship, Government of India gives 2,000 in Nepal and almost 1,000 in India, in engineering, medicine, forestry, many things. But there are other things which was earlier, like administrative colleges, foreign policy institute, and many things. But now it is almost none. So these are the area where you can talk because India has a greater leverage in Nepal in the sense that the lot of our bureaucrats, technocrats who studied in Indian institutions, Indian engineering colleges, medical institutions, lot of people trained in management universities, management colleges. So they have a leverage. Many people are working in the Nepalese media and technical side and other area. So you have a leverage. So these are the area which you can influence. And for media, every year Chinese took around more than 200 to 300 media people to Beijing. I cannot say that that much you have to do, but you have to do regular things. To youth exchange, bureaucratic exchange, and then what is called that the media people to visit. Earlier it was very regular, but this time what I found that in a year or two, 1 or 2 delegation coming or going. Earlier I have seen that the when Times of India, Hindustan Times, the Hindu, all these editors and many people visit Kathmandu and have a exchange and discussion on media issues and different international issues. But this is now it is none. When I was editor, I met Times of India editor here in Kathmandu. I have met MJ Akbar, who was then as Asian Age editor. But now I couldn't find anybody in Kathmandu. No exchange of it. So such things can be done. And that we already discussed at the moment. How and Chinese Buddhism. China is trying to replace Buddhism, but there is no discussion in Nepal on all these issues. India, there are a lot discussion, but that discussion can be held in Nepal. Even. Is it fine?
Sir, I think your network is problematic, sir. So
Yeah.
you're on and off.
Now it is okay.
Yeah, now it is okay, sir.
Okay. So I mean that it needs some sorts of exchanges, and look, there are other issues that the influence. In 50s and 60s, our almost all leaders have been trained, educated, friendly relation with the Indian leadership. But now there are new leadership in India as well as in Nepal also. So the political exchange are also very less at the moment. Very few leaders, MP is going visiting. So it's a kind of need to more exchanges, more visits, more discussion on media, on bureaucracy, and other and politics also. That's all.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. There are 3 more questions, but I think 2 of them can be clubbed, and one more is there from Dr. Amrit Singh Thakur. In fact, I'll take the Mr. Dr. Thakur's question first, and then we'll address the other question. He has talked about this, the Congress party's signing of MOU with the Communist Party, and what is the benefit that they get. Basically, the benefit is that the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation was funded heavily by the CCP after that MOU. So that is the benefit that they get. So, and so there is one more question: can all countries who have been affected, I think, can come together to counter the Chinese narrative? I think everybody has their own sovereignty and integrity questions. So all of them are doing it on their own, and maybe at some places they are clubbing together and doing some effort, but it's not so systematic. That much I can answer your question. So the other important question is from the name says Rakesh Sharma. I believe it is General Rakesh Sharma, who's a very knowledgeable person already on the subject. So we'll try and answer his question. He's actually talked about the AAIB, Asian Investment Bank, actually, which is funding the BRI projects and also the investments in unicorns like Paytm. Sir, I think I covered. I didn't elaborate, but I did cover that they are investing heavily in the tech industry. I didn't elaborate because of lack of time. But yes, this is a major influence operation that happens, particularly the BRI project that you're talking about. I think Namrata covered it a little bit effectively. Yeah, these are typical influence operations by the Chinese. These are the modus operandi that they adopt. This is one of the modus operandi that they adopt. So the other question that you have asked for Namrata is about the Chinese strategic relationship with Bangladesh, such as DC port, arms purchases, etc. Namrata, if you want to address it with your answer, after that we'll close the event. We have already exceeded a lot of time.
Okay. Very briefly, like I mentioned, the arms purchases, Bangladesh depends heavily on China. More than 50% of their arms are purchased from China. And then recently in January, very deep linkages. Like I said, even their military officers, they go there, on study leave, and they study in China. And last year, more than 200 of them went. Then in January 2023, Commander Mohammad Mustafa Kamal Rashid, working in Bangladesh embassy in Beijing, he used to work there, Beijing, and China. He has been elected as the chairman of Asia Pacific Regional Committee. The Asia Pacific Regional Forum, that it is made up of 70 military diplomats, 27 countries, from 27 countries of the Beijing Military Attaché Corps. This is a central organization of 240 military diplomats from 118 countries posted in China. So he has been made the chairman of that. And of course, you can understand that this of course will also lead to him attending a lot of meetings and seminars, and Bangladesh military officials will also be, have communication and coordination with all these organizations. Plus I'll tell you some like former this thing in November 2016, Bangladesh, to boost their naval power in the Bay of Bengal, they paid China a reported sum of 203 million US dollars for 2 submarines. So that then the FM-90 surface to air missile developed by China and popularly known as HQ-7 designation. So Bangladesh army has bought that in large numbers. Then actually in from 2015 there have been like I said, the Chinese embassy there, they host a lot of functions where their main focus in Bangladesh, of course, is the army. So they hosted a reception in 2015 at the anniversary of Chinese People's Liberation Army. So a lot of senior colonels and generals were there, and they also did a press release where they said that Bangladesh and China have maintained close defense ties. China not only is a reliable and affordable source of weapons and equipment for the Bangladesh armed forces, but also provides military technology and training to Bangladeshi, army officers. Then, then PLA naval destroyer Changsha that arrived in Bangladesh in 2022. So the linkages are very deep. They are developing a lot of ports. What they're also doing, one thing that I didn't mention in the presentation was that they are building, they are helping build e-villages. And those e-villages, right now, the concentration is, of course, in and around Dhaka and Chittagong. We know how important Chittagong is. And so the Chinese have deep linkages when it comes to defense and strategic and also military exchanges. So, I mean, because there's paucity of time, I've just given you maybe few examples. But like I said, more than 50% of their arm purchases are, from the Chinese.
Thank you, Namrata. Fabulous discussion, fabulous presentation. Great questions, and I thank all the participants for the great questions that they asked. Lively, engaging session that we have had. I want to thank Ambassador Vijay Karna and Namrata Sija for sparing your time. We exceeded our time actually. We wanted to finish it in 1.5 hours, but I think because of the interest in the topic, it got exceeded to around 2 hours, 2 hours instead of 1.5 hours. So I think, and also the participation was quite high. So I think the topic has generated a lot of interest. So I hope this kind of interest triggers people to go and study and create awareness on the subject. With that hope, I want to thank all of you for being here, especially the 2 speakers and the participants, and also to announce that we will be hosting another event very soon in a couple of weeks' time, around during the weekend only. So I look forward that you all participate. If you are interested in joining me, I will just leave my phone number in the chat box. You can just contact me on my phone. Send a WhatsApp message. I will definitely reply to that message and we can be in touch. So with that, I want to thank all of you and end this program for the day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Take
Good night.